All right, now we can do it. We're going to call the meeting to order. Tonight is a public meeting, a public hearing on two petition warrant articles that were submitted to the school district to be included on this year's warrant. So they're going to be up for vote at the district meeting. Tonight's hearing, as well as one that's going to occur in Lincoln on Wednesday night, are required by law for these two particular warrant articles. There were several warrant articles submitted. You'll see them all at the district meeting, but these two particular warrant articles require a public hearing in advance. And so that's why we're here tonight. Tonight's Woodstock's public hearing for those two warrant articles. For purposes of tonight's hearing, what we'll do, because these are petition warrant articles, we'll have an opportunity. I know that some of the folks that signed those petitions are here this evening. We'll give them an opportunity if there's somebody that in particular, and Mr. Sherwan, I think that Judy spoke to you about potentially presenting that. If you don't want to do that, that's fine.
No, that's fine, but she didn't talk to me about that.
Oh, okay. I thought you. Oh, email. Sorry. So
about presenting?
About speaking about the issue, I guess. I'm not sure between what the contact was between.
First I heard
that's
about
fine. The point is that we'll give 5 minutes to present the warrant article from somebody that wants to do that, and then further public comment will be we'll open further public comment, and those comments will be limited to 3 minutes a piece, just so we can get through everything that we need to get through. Tonight, no vote is going to be taken on these warrant articles. That will happen at the district meeting. Tonight's just sort of an informational session, so folks can sort of get a feel for what these articles are about, and what the potential outcomes could be if they're adopted or not adopted. First article is Article 17, and that article is, shall we adopt the provisions of RSA 32:5-B and implement a tax cap whereby the governing body or budget committee, the governing body in this case would be is the school board, because some of these statutes apply to sort of municipalities as well as the school districts, but the governing body in this case is the school board or budget committee shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes based on the prior fiscal year's actual amount of local taxes raised by more than 4%. The petition warrant article proposes the school board and budget committee will be limited to raising the budget for the Lin-Wood Cooperative School District to no more than 4% from the previous year, and the warrant must be voted on using a secret ballot with polls open for a minimum of one hour, and that requires a 3/5 majority. So if approved, the tax cap shall be in effect for the next fiscal year. So is there somebody from the petitioner side that wants to present that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Sure.
And I apologize if I misunderstood that email or whatever you sent. Wasn't aware of that. I was going to speak tonight. Okay. Now, so basically, a 4% cap. Other towns are doing this. Yeah.
Could you
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Paul Sherwan. I have 3 children at the Lin-Wood Cooperative School, and I've been following the school board for about 3 years now. I'm attending most of the meetings, actually. And anyways, so a lot of towns are doing this 4% cap, or others have, I should say. The average state tuition is about $17,000 per student. We're about 32,000.
26.
Okay, well, there depends how you cut the thing. We're paying.
The state reports it as 26,000.
All right. Well, anyway, when you take 8.5 million divided by the number of students, it's 32. But anyways, we're paying substantially more than anyone else. And our grades are, we have 75% failure rate in the high school and 75% failure rate in the 7th grade. And these same 7th graders had 83% failure rate in science. So we have very, very, very low test scores, extremely low test scores. And we're spending a lot of money, and we have good ratios. We have very high ratios, 4-to-1 teacher ratio. We have, a very substantial, a much higher cost per student, and a much lower. We aren't meeting the state standard on math and science and English for most of the grades. And quite honestly, with that huge differential of what's 17 and 26? That's was that 35-40% higher than we're paying than everyone else, and yet we aren't getting the reciprocal amount on grades. And a lot of people have to realize a lot of residents are on fixed incomes. We have a very senior population, and a lot of them are in fixed incomes. And you know, we've done the budget board, as you might know, was disbanded last year by a very small amount of voters. 207 people came out to vote. That's about $32,000. No, it's $42,000 per vote, and that was a big turnout to vote. And so you have a very small population driving this huge expense, and we're just not getting the bang for the buck. And a lot of people like to reference the big houses on the hill, and you know, they don't need to worry about the money. But people on fixed income, like my mom, who's 91, I looked at her Social Security check recently for her, you know, doing her taxes. It was a pittance. I mean, you need every dollar to get by. And last year, Jerry Springham, and here I won't speak ill of him, I'm speaking well of him. He did an analysis, and he broke down every block of every teacher of every class in the high school. And just by doing that, he said each block is worth $15,000. He broke out, you know, if you want this, it's available, or I can send it to you. And just by moving the boxes around, you know, because some of the classes, at least this is how it was last year, some of the classes only have 2 students in them. And some of the teachers actually don't do anything if they have a period that they don't have kids. And so if you rearrange those boxes, not firing anyone or anything, you can eliminate a person or 2, or at least get those people to be tutors for these, you know, 75% of the ones that are failing in math. So the system's broken. It's absolutely broken. It has a negative feedback. You have a very small amount of people voting over and over and over again, about 150 to 207. And you know, it needs to change, because this system it just doesn't work, and we got to do something for the kids. You know, you can't have those 5th graders that were failing at 83% math are still failing at 75% in the 7th grade. I mean, nothing's changed. And the high school, like again, I said, 75% failing math, and was it 70% in science? You know, and the school, quite honestly, they didn't give us the grades for the NWEA, the most recent ones. You know, they did it the previous couple of years, and they just stopped giving us grades. You have a question? I mean, I could answer a question. I don't think that's probably.
Yeah. So if you have a question for Mr. Sugarman, you can address that question to him outside the scope of this meeting. We've got to sort of get through this stuff.
Right. But I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah. And if you have some sort of public comment regarding the warrant article, we can do that. I'm going to give a lot of the issues that Mr. Sugarman brings up are sort of beyond the scope of what we're here tonight to do. So I'll just give you some information about sort of the impact of what this actual warrant article it is proposed to do. So the 4% tax cap is designed to be a limitation on the amount of that the school board or budget committee can propose to be raised by taxes. And so we look back at the year prior, and we look back at what the new proposal is, and that cannot exceed a 4% increase over year to year. I would note that in my time on the school board, which is 4 years now, and then in my time on the budget committee before that, I don't think we've ever approached that. But that would be the result of the vote. There's some complicating factors in the way that our school district raises money. It wouldn't be necessarily a 4% limitation on what the budget committee is proposing or what the school board is proposing. It's a tax limitation. So there's some things in the individual towns that could complicate that calculation. There's some things in the at the district that can complicate that. But basically, the idea of it is to try to limit the increase year to year to 4%. The changes that some things that can affect that are assessed valuations by the towns can impact the tax rate, but not the amount that is going to be raised by local taxes. There's some there's additional sort of, I guess the way to word it, but the way that the budget committee and the school board, or if it's the school board or the budget committee, makes their budget, oftentimes there's money, and I think most every year there's money that goes back to the towns. That's not going to be included in that 4% cap. So basically, it becomes a bit of a tricky calculus about how that 4% cap is raised. But overall, the idea is, and the RSA 32(5)(b) allows the towns to essentially limit what the increase is going to be. But that being said, there are sort of ways to override that. So that is only limits what can be proposed to the town. The town can then, at the district meeting, can then change that. And any changes that are made at the district meeting would not be affected by the cap. So, there's a number of sort of things to consider with the tax cap. There's not, I don't think the school board this is not our issue, so we're not taking a particular position on that. But the idea of a tax cap is what I think the idea of a budget cap is what's being proposed through the means of a tax cap, and it doesn't exactly work like that. So by adopting this tax cap, we're not saying you can't really say that the school can't exceed 4% of its budget from the previous year, because there is a lot of things that go into that analysis. And you may find that even if you adopt the tax cap, if the towns adopt the tax cap, it doesn't necessarily translate into a 4% budget cap on the school district year to year. That being said, though, again, I don't think I've seen it approach 4% in my time. So whether that ever becomes an issue, I guess it would be we would see if it ever came down to it. But at this point, I don't think I've ever experienced it. That is a 3/5 majority vote. So at the meeting, there will be voted on. The polls will be open at the meeting, right? And so you'll have an opportunity to vote on that, and then if there's a 3/5 majority, it will be adopted, and I guess we'll have to figure out ways to add up all those numbers and make sure everything makes sense. But it also, if it is adopted, there's another 3/5 vote to rescind it if something happens that doesn't work out. So. Is there any other public comment about that article? Or is there any public comment about that article?
Yeah. Are there any numbers that say how much it actually does increase from annual? I haven't looked it up. I just wonder if there are any numbers.
Yes.
Does it ever exceed 4% or?
Like I said, I've never seen it, and I haven't been around forever. I think this year it's 1.2%.
Yeah, I have some history for like the last 10 years.
Sure.
I went back and looked. So this year, the proposed budget that the school board is proposing is 1.2% increase. Last year was a negative increase because the year before there was a one-time. So last year was a negative 1.3%. The year before that was 4.7%, but it had a one-time increase in it. The year before that was 0.4%, 3.2%, 3.1, 2.3, minus 0.7, 1%, 1.2%.
Okay. Does that involve also encumbered?
Yeah, that's
Money.
just the total proposed budget each year.
Thank you.
And again, that 4% would, my understanding is that 4% doesn't include things like bond payments and
Right, because that's offset by revenues.
right, things of that nature. So
Grants that are offset by revenues.
so I think the idea of the article is to limit the school's budget increase. It doesn't necessarily translate in that way as that is. But I guess is there any other comment on that? Yes.
Well, did you say that?
Sorry, if you could just identify yourselves because we're.
Brenda Nealon.
Thank you.
I read this, but then you said you could go over one.
It's,
if you had to.
It-
So what's the point of it?
so it's not necessarily that we could go over. My understanding of the statute, and we've gotten some consultation from the district's attorney, is that there are instances where it's a limitation on the proposed budget from either the governing body or the budget committee if there is one. So we could not propose to the district a budget that exceeds a 4% or that translates to a 4% increase to the towns in
And
their
now
tax
you do
cap.
10%, right?
What's that?
You can do 10% now, a difference of 10%, right?
I'm not sure on that. I don't have that off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
so that's 6%, right?
Yeah.
Less than my check. Okay.
I don't think it's ever been done.
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you're getting at, but the bottom line is there would be a limitation of 4% in increase to the town's tax base, not necessarily 4% to the district. However, if at the district meeting, there were amendments made to the budget by the voters, then the voters are not limited to that 4%. So if there were amendments at the meeting to increase the budget beyond the 4%, the voters would not be limited to the 4%. So I think the limitation would apply to whatever body, whether it's the school board or if the district or the budget committee is reinstated, because that's an article that's going to be been proposed. Whoever's crafting the budget is going to be the one that's limited, and not necessarily the voters if they decide to change that.
Jay, can I just clarify? So what
Sure.
you're saying is, as the governing body, you can't ask for a budget to be more than 4% of last year, but as voters, we can override what you say and say, we want 6% because we want this.
That is my understanding.
Because you can always amend it, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I, to be clear, it's not, because it is complicated, it's not as simple as we can't exceed last year's budget by 4%. It's we can't craft a budget that raises the tax rate by more than 4%. So that it's a bit more complicated because there's some additional things that affect that in the towns. So, sorry.
I mean, 2 different towns and 2 different tax rates.
Right.
Right.
And as we all know, there's things that happen in the towns that affect the tax rates. So any other questions or comments on that?
Just real quick comment.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say it again. As far as what Jay said, I mean, we have to remember that the school budget board was eliminated. And there's no check or balance to the system at all right now. At all. They can put in any type of budget they want, any amount they want, anytime they want. So,
As community members that are also paying taxes.
Right.
Sure,
And
and-
it's not a, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and it certainly, while that may be true,
Jay.
we do have a district meeting.
No, I just
yeah.
want to speak on behalf of the school board. We do speak to most of the teachers will come in and present. We go through this budget. Oh, I was on the budget committee before this too for several years. The school board is very responsible. For us to only increase by 1% is pretty amazing, actually, with all the needs that everybody comes to us with and the stuff that we cut out. We do cut a lot of stuff out. So it's not, I'm not saying anything against Paul. I'm just saying that we don't just all of a sudden throw a bunch of stuff in there at the end like it sounds. We do not do that. We're very responsible as far as that goes.
And I'd like to say too, that I've been on the school board for almost 6 years. And the budget committee was not disbanded because we don't want checks and balances. It was voted to disband because it was a negative experience that was not in the best interest of the school. So I feel like there's a lot of misinformation and kind of fear mongering that isn't helpful.
I agree. What the things you're saying, we didn't disband this budget committee that we get knocked on so hard for doing. The people that are staring at us disbanded the budget committee.
Yeah, that was done by a public vote.
Yeah.
Right.
It had nothing-
50-50 now.
God,
Could you elaborate on the negative experience?
We've just, as though we're now, I mean, as Paul just said, we can put whatever we want into it, whenever we want, we can adjust things, no one's overseeing us. So it's not that we got rid of this budget committee and then just turned around and started just throwing numbers at a budget and putting things in.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. My question was about what was negative about having a budget committee before. You said it was a negative experience, and I'm just curious.
Well, I think
why that was the
I think the negative experience was shown last year during the discussions that were made.
And the year before that, and the year before that, it was a negative at its core group that constantly was accusing the school of things, constantly trying to slash the budget. I'm all for keeping our budget low. I understand. I'm all for keeping our taxes low. I'm all for keeping our voters happy. I understand that we have residents with fixed incomes. I don't necessarily take into consideration the second homeowners who have all this money. That's not my, that's not what drives my decisions. It was a group of people that, see, I don't want to sit here and talk negatively. It was a bad experience, meaning that when we were trying to put together and agree upon a budget that was the best for our school and the best for our voters, the best for our students, we were met with months of accusations, unrealistic budget proposals, and it was a negative experience.
I think we're getting a bit far afield on that
I
issue.
want to comment on that as a budget committee member. I was going to keep my mouth shut until they said, so this was said. It started with me 3 years ago when the administration made the budget committee go through the right to know law to get information. The budget committee is a board just like you guys who should have got any information they wanted to open. We had to go through, hire an attorney and go through the right to know law. We also got locked out of the building 3 meetings in a row and were not allowed to meet because administration didn't. So to say that it was negative, you need to see both sides, and we probably should discuss both sides sometime. But right now, you don't have a budget committee. We need to go forward from that and let the voters decide on that.
And
But to say that it was negative, we were treated very negatively 3 years ago.
Yeah,
And
I
we're
just
not
wanted
here
to
to
say,
discuss that, and I wouldn't have opened it.
right now, you do have a budget meeting and open budget hearing at this point, where people have
correct.
the all residents have the opportunity to say something about the budget
That's correct. And
at a public forum.
it's effectively an identical process as what happens with a budget committee. It's just the same group of people that crafts the budget initially. The budget would then go to the budget committee. They would make recommendations, and that budget would be the one that was submitted to the voters. Now we craft the budget. We go over what the district proposes. We prepare the budget, and our budget is the one that goes to the district. And I think we're responsible stewards of the community's money. We're community members ourselves. We're all paying the same taxes that you folks are, and we're interested in providing for the students in the best way we can in a way that's financially responsible. I don't think anyone sitting at this table is interested in making the school or the community unaffordable. I think we have a big enough problem with that already. So I would say that, our budget this year, as you'll see, or if you maybe you've already taken a look at it, I think is a reflection of that. It's a reflection of our attempt to keep the budget reasonable in a time when we're seeing inflation nationwide at 7%. We're at 1.2%. I think that, and you'll also see that a lot of those increased expenses are things that we have no control over. Things like special ed needs, things like fuel heating costs, big ticket items that we don't have any control over. So I feel like it will bear out once you folks get a chance to look at that budget, that we are responsible stewards of your funds. Beyond that, though, the tax cap is what sort of is being proposed and what's being voted on. And again, it will probably be limited circumstances where that will ever come into effect, but that's sort of what's up. That's what Article 17 is about. And I guess I'd like to move on, if there's nothing else.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
At the district meeting, will Mr. Sherwan be speaking like he did tonight before?
So everyone will have an opportunity at that district meeting to make a public comment. And to be honest with you, I don't remember the rules that Robert uses or with regards to how much time he gives each person, but it's Robert Weatherall, who's the district's moderator, so he's the one that will set the ground rules for how much time folks are given. So anybody will be able to make a statement regarding that particular article before the voting opens. Anything else on that article specifically? Okay. So the next article is whether or not, and I'll just read it, Article 18, by petition to increase voter participation by changing Lincoln Woodstock to an SB2 district so that elections happen in November where turnout is substantially higher. So I'll give a bit of an explanation because that doesn't give a whole lot of information about what SB2 is. SB2 is RSA 40:14. SB2 is sort of the colloquial term for it. But basically, instead of having the normal town meeting style district meeting where people show up, articles are presented, they take voice votes. If there's any controversy, they can request counts and ballots and things of that nature. But the traditional town meeting style district meeting that we are all accustomed to would go away. And that would be replaced with a sort of bifurcated meeting. There would be an additional meeting called the deliberative session that would where all of the changes to the warrant articles in the budget would be made. And then the second session would be just voting by secret ballot on all of those warrant articles. So instead of, and at the second meeting, there would be no opportunity to amend, there would be no opportunity to change any of those warrant articles. That would all happen at the deliberative session. So it takes that one meeting and splits it into two separate meetings. What it would not do is change the voting to November. So that's in there. It's had to be included because that was the wording on the petition and we cannot change that. But by law, that would not change the voting to November. The voting would still happen on the second Tuesday in March. The second voting session, the deliberative session would happen, I believe, in February. There's delineated timelines by statute for all the meetings. The statute provides deadlines for the budget committee to submit everything, any proposed warrant articles that would change, basically anything regarding the school. They have a specific timeline that needs to be met. All of those would be submitted prior to the deliberative session. At that deliberative session, folks would have an opportunity to come and make changes to those and vote on changes to those. And then in March the 2nd, we would just come, show up and check off boxes. So there would no longer be any sort of town meeting style voting at the second Tuesday in March meeting. So that's what the effect of that would be. It would just be eliminate the traditional town meeting style meeting that we have. And again, it would not change our voting to November. Yes.
When you say the second Tuesday in March, does that mean you have your deliberative session and then they vote when they come to the town?
So
or do you still have your own voting?
So we would, sorry.
No, keep going. What ends up happening is you have your deliberative session, as what you said.
Right.
So you take all of the warrant articles that are presented at your school district meeting, and those are on a ballot. So in March, you will just vote on the warrant articles.
But you go, people from Lincoln would go to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Right, and the people from Woodstock would go to Woodstock.
So you vote at our town, meeting,
Yeah.
our town election.
Yes.
Right.
During the day.
So it wouldn't change it to sort of the federal election dates in November.
Correct.
So one of the things that's noteworthy is that we sort of have a deliberative session for the budget. We have our budget hearing. The budget committee had their budget hearings. We had budget hearings this year. And I don't know that there was more than 10 people that showed up to the deliberative session for the budget hearing this year. So that the idea that this could potentially increase voter turnout, I think is potentially a bit misleading. Number one, it's definitely not. Well, hold on, Mr. Sherwood. I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt anybody
But you
else.
didn't let me speak.
Please don't interrupt anybody else, Mr. Sherwood.
You don't have to raise your voice.
Apparently I do, because you continue to interrupt. So the idea is that there would be no longer the voting session where we all have an opportunity to amend those. That's typically the meeting where we have the highest turnout. We did not have, like I say, more than 10% turnout or 10 people turn out to the budget committee meeting. Now, what that means is those 10 people or so that show up to that deliberative session would be the ones that are making all of the decisions on what the warrant articles are that we get to vote on, and no changes would happen after that. So essentially, if people don't show up to the deliberative session in February, then whoever does, whether that could be a small group of people that are able to make amendments to the warrant articles, to the budget article, and to any other articles before the voters in March, and then there would be no opportunity to change those after that. So, but again, a bit misleading is that nothing would happen in November. I think that's just sort of that was a misunderstanding, or folks didn't understand how that would actually work, but clarification on that, we couldn't change it because that was what was proposed by the petition. So Mr. Sherman.
Yeah, I didn't mean to
That's
get you
fine.
upset.
That's fine, just keep
I apologize. Yeah, so basically, there's, in the last election, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 207 voters, okay? And that is about, I don't know how many people show up to the town meeting, but about a tenth of that, maybe. Substantially less. So if you have them at the same time, it would actually increase voter participation substantially by at least 2 or 3-fold. That's very conservative, and maybe as much as 10-fold if it was in November. The problem is with this is that, or one of the problems is when they first scheduled the meeting for this year, for the vote for this year, it was March 15th, and they changed it to March 24th. You know, I think that was, you know, within 6 weeks, they changed it. And it's very hard to track, I think, for the average voter when the meeting is, especially when it changes.
Can I just briefly say that it's changed because we're sitting here?
Because of this.
Right, well, that
That's
isn't
why
the
it
only
changed.
time it's changed in the last 10 years. Last year, I think it changed as well. At the
Because of
last
COVID.
meeting.
Because of COVID.
We were trying to find the best opportunity to get people out to vote.
Okay, but it changes, that's the point. It changes, people don't know when it changes. The participation is between 150 and 207, okay? If this passes, it will bring everyone in the community on board with the school and be able to participate collectively. Right now, it's a very small group of people, and I'm not saying that they're suppressing the vote, but that's in fact what is actually happening.
That's so not true. Anybody
Because
that wants to vote can vote.
it's
It's like-
the people who turn out are mostly employees of the school and their family, and they're totally okay to vote. It's fine with them to vote, you know, and they get to vote for their spouses on the school board, you know.
Hold on. Jackie, if you could, if we could not interrupt,
Sorry.
thank you. We want to.
So it will change. This is a game changer. This is an absolute game changer. Putting it to where more people will vote, more people will be involved, and we'll all know when they actually have the election.
I do have a
Can I
quick
just ask
question.
a question real quick, wait, just so I can learn myself? What happens if, you know, you have the people that turn out for town meeting, turn out, they listen to the articles, they discuss, and then they vote? So what happens if those same people didn't go to the deliberative session for the school, then do we have a lot of uneducated people voting because they didn't get a chance because they're not going to be reviewed again at town meeting?
Well, you get to
So-
vote on it at the town meeting, so I mean,
You get to vote, but it's not discussed. Like when you're discussing the warrant articles, you know, when you present the warrant to the community, it's discussed there, it's amended there. Which all your townspeople there, if those same people are not at the deliberative session for the school, we have a lot of uneducated people voting
Absolutely.
then.
That's the only thing that's guaranteed by
People
this.
right now are more educated there.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
I'm
you're
just trying
opening for discussion, like the whole warrant's open for discussion. It could be.
Like we're doing
Like
right
we're
now.
doing
Right,
now.
right.
How would those same people, they'd be getting a ballot, but there would be no discussion if they didn't make the deliberative
Wouldn't
session?
it be easier
Well, I
just to
don't
do it
understand
one
what I'm
meeting?
trying to
No,
say.
I think I'm tracking you. And it's different, but again, when you have between 150 and 207 people decide
all of the elected officials, all of the budget. You have to go back and look at, I'm sorry, you have to go back and look at our test scores. This system is broken. We spend 10,000 more.
Yeah,
I don't wanna get into the test score. I was just
This
simply
meeting
asking
isn't
about
for
what
it.
Right,
other
right, and I
things.
think that's just like
I don't
another
wanna go
process,
there.
it's just the same process in a different day, that's all.
So then what makes the difference if you
I
have
don't
the same?
You get more
understand,
people.
I don't understand what difference between November,
Mhm.
what, how do you say there'll be so much more participation?
Well, hold on, just to clarify, nothing is gonna happen in November, no matter whether this is voted or
This
not.
entire position is misleading
Yeah.
and inaccurate.
But
The
so
whole statement is misleading and inaccurate.
by law,
If it was voted for, it would be invalid. We wouldn't be able to do anything with
Well-
it because it's misleading and inaccurate.
if the townspeople voted to adopt an SB2 district,
Right.
we would be, we're bound by the statutory timelines, which we are currently a March district, so we would continue to vote in March. Nothing would change unless we voted to change that to either April or May, but beyond April or May, the statute does not allow anything beyond that. So we would not be able to change to, say, when we conduct federal elections, when there would be higher turnout. It does change it from one session where we're getting both information and voting to two sessions where the information is being given to people who should decide to show up at that session and then come and vote at the second session. And so that's the main change.
But you are correct to question that. Why does it say to increase voter participation
In November.
where it's substantially higher? There's no cause to believe that that's true, that dividing it into two meetings is going to increase voter participation. More likely, it will decrease that because how can people try to attend two meetings, one informative and one voting, when supposedly it's difficult to attend one? So.
Communication is an issue in this town.
Mhm.
We don't have a paper. We don't have a TV station. The only real communication is through Facebook.
Well, if the town.
It's the
emails
truth.
are really good.
You
Can
can
I
come
speak when
here
everybody's
and
done?
if you're interested and pick up information and all that. But, you know, in most places, you have a place where you can get information. Whether it be a light up board with, in a public place where everybody passes by and sees what is coming up for everything. Or I find it really hard to believe that most of it is done through Facebook. We have no means of communication. And that's why so few people attend. It goes by word of mouth. Several people here tonight are here because word of mouth. And I get them, but not everybody knows to do that. You know? I know.
Really tried.
And there's a large population of elderly people in this community who do not communicate in that fashion
That's
at all.
correct.
At
That
all.
is
I
correct.
agree with you completely on that point.
Unfortunately, I don't know that we're gonna solve that problem.
Right.
And I don't know that we're gonna be able to do so.
But I just wanted to say about
Well,
November.
hold on,
Okay.
because I believe Ms. Clark
I
wants to speak.
just wanted to ask, I think with the SB2, you can do a mail-in ballot as well. So you would show up and just cast your vote. But if you aren't in town on voting day, you can also do a mail-in ballot, so your opinion still counts, even if you can't make it to the voting. Yeah, yeah.
Can you not do that now?
You can do that now. too.
Just on the official ballot.
And it's all right, yeah. It's the same in the town, you can only do the.
Oh, right, that's right. you did it already. I don't see a different participation when you create two meetings. I've been going to school board meetings for 20 years, well, to the town meeting. And it is the same people, but it's not the wives and husbands of the school board. It's the members of the community that are concerned about the school and are concerned about having the right thing happen for our kids. I see numerous people there that are second homeowners that don't have kids in our school district that stand up and say, Lin-Wood's a great school. I'm so glad I moved to this community. I'm here to support the school. I don't think having two meetings, one of them where people aren't going to show up and the other one where they're going to vote uneducated, is going to change anything. At least at this meeting, the way we have it, you go in, you ask questions, you vote. if the vote becomes controversial, then we do a ballot instead of hand raising. I don't see that this SB2 thing is better other than the absentee ballot. I don't know, I've had kids go through this school, it's got good parts, it's got bad parts. Big cities have different issues. They have more money and they've joined towns. Our town school is expensive and frustrating because we have to pay for everything. We have to pay for buildings, we have to pay for heat, we have to pay for buses, we have lots of special ed. People flock to Lincoln and Woodstock because of Bloom's handicap program, which brings more special ed. I can name 10 kids right now that have gone through that program that moved to Lincoln because of that. It's not about the school board trying to shaft the town's taxes and jam them up so they get better things. I just don't see it. That's just my opinion. Been here most of my life and I don't see an issue with any of it. I think the people that show up to the meeting show up there because they care, and the ones that don't show up are like, well, I don't care, I have to pay those taxes whether I show up at the meeting or not, I'm just gonna pay them and move on.
Yes. For those of you who don't know, I'm Joe Bossy. I just wanted to speak a little bit on the moving of the meeting, because it kind of sounded like we did it and we did it deviously or whatever, but the moving of the meeting was due to the petition articles from the public. A couple of those petitions required public meetings so that we could go to both towns and let two towns know what was actually going on. It required a waiting period. So it forced us to move the meeting up to March 24th. It wasn't like we just said, oh no, we don't want this meeting here, we're gonna bump it up. That's just not the way it happened. And I just wanted the public to know that that was kind of out of our control. It was due to petitioned articles. Thank you.
I just have a clarifying question.
Sure, thank you.
Am I correct in thinking that even if the majority of people voted yes on this, it can't happen because the wording includes November? So if people wanted to go to be an SB2 town, then it would have to go on again next year with the proper wording. Like, I just don't understand why we are going to spend time talking about something and voting on something that can't.
Can it be amended?
Yeah,
So-
can it be amended? or-
So yeah, I don't think that it's sort of an all or nothing based on that. I think the adoption of the SB2 district could still go forward potentially. I think it's a 3/5 vote though, so it's, it has to be a substantial majority. But I think that it could probably be amended at the meeting. In addition to that, it would just be subject to the normal timelines and statutory timelines.
But it will not be November.
It will not,
I
nothing
got it.
that we can do, nothing that the voters can do, or nothing that we can do can make
Exactly.
our
Got it.
district be voting in November. So
Alright.
if just because there's a flaw doesn't necessarily validate it in its entirety.
Okay.
And I believe that's the opinion of the district's attorney as well. So it still could happen.
Got it.
And so that's why we have to put it on and vote on it.
And just one more
Sure.
thing about that November thing. There is legislation at the State House that is trying to move all the elections to November. Okay.
No.
So,
Why do we have to change the wheel?
because it's broken.
It's not broken though.
No,
We
we're
have-
14 years from now when the
We have
state house
75%
decides to
failure
vote
in
on
high
it.
school in math.
All right, is there any other comment or question about that particular article?
Oh,
Yeah, I can-
Okay, I guess with that, we will, we'll adjourn tonight's meeting. I don't believe we need to take a motion on that, but